Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to make some decorations for some of these plugs that you can put in the audio jacks of your devices. Mainly speaking about the standard ones for like phones and stuff. But I'm starting out with a cute tiny hedgehog. I mainly have two devices that I always struggle with keeping the dust out, and one of them is my tower PC. The problem is it has a plug on top of the case, which means that dust can fall in very easily, and I never use that because I have an audio card, but just in case I ever need or want to use that, I just want to make sure that there's no dirt in there that I then have to painstakingly clean out. So I picked up these like plastic plug things for these the audio plugs, and I decided why not also decorate that, because you know, just having a boring or black plastic plug looking out of my PC is not really that much fun. So instead, you know, I decided to make a cute little creature that will sit on top, plus it will be easier to remove the plug when I need to. So I started out with making like an egg shape that I lengthened the head of, and then I wanted to have the hedgehog kind of laying on his back. So I cut away some of the chin parts just to make it that the head like moves forward as much as I needed to. And then I shaped the nose, and it was finally time to add the spikes, and for that I used my silicone shaper on the clay and just, you know, carefully like scored it to give the illusion of spikes in the face, and then I added some wormy dealies all around the hedgehog itself, just around the body to like give it a bit more dimension. And once I'm texturing that in the same way as the body, it should hopefully give it a bit more, you know, life and that spiky look. I'm not going for realism here, I'm going for more like a cutesy vibe. But I still hope that it will be recognizable enough as a cute little hedgehog. Also, the clay I'm using here is polymer clay, mainly Sculpting medium. I like to use this one for like very detailed sculptures that I want to paint afterwards. If I want a color version, I'm always using Fimo, but in this case I knew I wanted to paint it in like more neutral colors than I had in clay form, so I chose Sculpting medium. And as you can see, with me actually having added the wormy dealies before, the texture I'm adding all around the body with my stylus is definitely a bit more prominent than what you can see all around the face, which is very nice and definitely the outcome I hoped it would be. The only trouble I really had with this sculpture was figuring out how I wanted the eyes. When I was shaping the face, I was thinking, you know, I'm gonna add some black beady eyes and it's gonna look super cute. So what I did after I reshaped the face a bit, because I was touching it while giving texture to the other parts, I just indented it, made some tiny sockets, and then added eyeballs. I tried adding eyelids, nothing looked right, it just looked very weird. So in the end, after like playing around with it for a while on and off camera, basically what I did is I kept it as just the sockets. I think, you know, they will look quite cute when painted. I don't know, I think the eyes protruded way too much, and in this scale, like when I pressed them in and made them look flatter, they just didn't really look nice at all. Like even with the tiny like wormy dealies blended in around the eyes, it just looked very wrong. But as you can see, I also added some tiny ears. These I just basically put around a very small ball stylus, pressed them in place, and then like cut them to shape before blending them in. These are super fragile, of course, but they're small enough that I'm not too worried about using any other clay. If they were a bit larger, I would definitely use something like cosplay on these, but in this case they are like small enough and like well blended enough to not give me any worries that they will, you know, suddenly break off if I don't like harshly bump them. And since they're on top of my PC and that is on a stand, I hardly ever touch the top of that, and I don't really have any fear about, breaking this, except for when I obviously have to remove it. Now for the hands, I basically did the log version. I made like a little tiny log of clay, and then I indented it, cut out the fingers, curled them up, and then I have this. I like to do this for like even pieces, because I have the feeling that, especially for hands and stuff, if you make multiple, if you have like a log that is like one size and you make them both on the sides of the log and then you cut them, that it just makes it more even. And then of course these arms needed to be blended in, and I added some more texture before adding the feet, which just were like more tiny logs just pressed in place, and then with some little toes added. After I was done sculpting and adding all of the final details, it was time for this little guy to go in the oven, and then afterwards it was painting time. I'm using miniature paints or model paints in this case, and I'm starting off with a base coat of this cream color. I thought this was the easiest to add all of the other layers on top. And I had my reference open at all times. As I said, I didn't want to go for absolute realism, but I still wanted to get the colors pretty nice and comparable to that. So I checked where all of the markings were, applied a white base layer, and then I went in with some grey and brownish grey, just to blend into the face a little bit, since those usually are a bit darker than the rest of the white tones. And then it was time to add the little hands and feet colors. And I went in with a bit more of a dark pink at first, and I thought maybe this would work well because it's more of a neutral tone, but it didn't really, so I lightened it up with some white and got this more like pale blush pink instead of this like more berry kind of tone. And that worked way better in the end. I just had to go over the edges a bit with some white and like blend that out. And to give these feet a little bit of shading, I actually went in with some pure white where it was still wet, and then I just like blended it in together with the pink I just added. For the spikes, I wanted to go with some variation of colors just sprinkled randomly, because actually the spikes of hedgehogs have different colors and different parts. And to get that effect, I didn't want to go in and paint every single stripe. I just wanted to like get the illusion that the spikes have different colors. So I went in with this like more of a chocolate brown and like randomly splattered it about, making sure that it sometimes gets into the groove, sometimes just sits on top. The base color I basically am going to keep and just reinforce a bit with another layer, and that should help hopefully give it this more like spiky aesthetic instead of it looking like long fur. This process actually took quite a while longer than I expected, like all these stripes, because I wanted them to look pretty decently like defined, so I went over them multiple times just to, because the hedgehog spikes are pretty defined and smooth. And after I was done with the first layer, I went back in with some of the cream, and then I went in with some blackish brown. I didn't want to go full black. I mixed up with a little bit of brown to like not make it look too dark in contrast with all these colors, and I think it worked out pretty nicely. I'm definitely quite happy with how the spikes turned out and how they look spiky. And then, of course, we also are missing the eyes and nose, and for that I'm going in with pure black. I just want to make sure that the nose is not overcolored. I had to fix it a little, because it definitely looked a bit too large for my taste. But in the end, I think with some of the grayish white, once that was dry, I fixed it pretty well. And I, of course, gave some shading to the inner ears, just to make them look a bit more cute, and then I also painted the outside with the like lighter colors and like blended the brown and the cream color in. And I'm always making sure to like keep the edges where like the spikes start, also around the nose, like a bit more uneven, just to make it look, you know, like the colors are spread by the spikes, since they're not even at all. Same goes, of course, for the areas that meet up with the white and the darker spikes. Next up, I made sure to seal the sky. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to add a wash in the beginning, so I decided I'm going to seal this with some heavy matte varnish, and that should actually, once it's dry, like let me wipe off the wash when I don't like it. But in the end, I think it added a nice bit of detail and, you know, make it blend like a bit more together. All I did was I mixed up like some brownish black wash of like the same color that I actually used for the like almost black for the spikes, but watered down with a bit more brown. It basically made the perfect wash color, and then I like dabbed it off with a paper towel, and in the end it looked really adorable. Of course, the last thing I needed to add was the plug, and this little guy's done. Now the next one is a quick project. As you can see, I made this little mold box of a Zelda rupee, and it clicks together. And what I have here is 00 silicone. This is a very soft silicone that hardens pretty quickly and dries squishy. And I created the mold in a way where I have this little peg on the top that I can like, you know, basically have stuck in the silicone, that when I like pull it out, it will create a little loop to hang things from. And I waited a little bit until this silicone was a bit more tough and cured. And then I stuck the two halves together. I could have filled one half and then, you know, added the other half later, but I was worried about the spilling edges since this is a very small mold, so I went with this method, and in the end it worked super well. All I did was basically like design the rupee, put a box around it, cut out the negative and added the little loop. And it worked, it just worked. I may want to design a different like kind of loop pattern in the future, but I definitely want to go back to making like these kind of squishy charms. And the reason why I chose this is because this is for my DS, and most of the games I play on my DS are Pokemon and Zelda related. And I had like a rubber rupee before that wasn't really squishy, but I remember like always playing around with it while I was playing my game, so I decided in honor of that I'm going to make a squishy version. And I know not everybody has a 3D printer, but I'm pretty certain that you can make this with a clay mold and then just, you know, hooks that you can find at the store. There's like a lot of metal and plastic tiny hooks that you can find, even online, for very cheap. And if you like make a mold box in like 2 parts and like make it out of clay flat and just put your item inside there, I think you can achieve the same thing. But, you know, for ease, and since I have a 3D printer and I can design these things, I always wanted to try making something like this, like a close-off mold box for Silicone, and it worked out super well. And as I mentioned before, with the sculpture of the hedgehog, I'm super happy. It's like not too large, it definitely fits the space well and does cover it from dust, but it also gives me enough access to all the other ports and stuff that I need to reach on top, as you can see. But it's also super cute, like every time I go past it and I see this little guy, it just makes me smile. It makes me super happy. I'm so glad I made him. And you know, these like natural colors, they don't stick out too much. They are not too like, you know, in your face, but they're still a nice little decorative detail. And it wasn't too awfully difficult to make him. It was just a bit more time consuming with all the details. And the thing I love most about this project in general is that it's super simple. Like, these plugs don't really cost that much at all. You can get them in bulk, and you know, you can make keychain-esque decorations or like direct decorations like I did with the hedgehog. And you're not limited at all to one material. As you saw, I used silicone and I used polymer clay. You can also easily make some resin charms or something else that you want to add for decoration. Maybe even like make a little bedazzled charm or something if you want to. So it definitely is a craft that like is very open to any kind of creativity. But let me know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts of this? Would you actually, you know, in this day and age where a lot of phones don't have this kind of headphone jack anymore, would you actually make some of these like little charms and dust covers? Or would you, you know, just have the plug open? And as always, I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!